Okay, so as you can see there, guys, I've got the bumper removed. Piece of piss, very straightforward, simple fasteners, no special tools. You know, a bunch of plastic fasteners and some 10mm bolts. You need a fork and a 10mm ratchet. Okay, so here we are, the condenser here, guys. Now that the bumper is actually removed, you can actually see the extent of the corrosion damage. Now remember, this section here is the subcooling. That's the one that actually does the bulk. This section here does the bulk of the cooling actually. Once it's actually gone through the receiver dryer. Look how many rows are missing. These are all actually missing. And this is adrift. So you can see the extent of the damage. Of course, here's where the leak actually was. So very straightforward to remove it. It's shock mounted, of course, guys, right? At the four corners. So it's just two brackets. If you guys may recall, I actually replaced this rad not too long ago, so those fasteners are new. I don't expect, he says, I don't expect any issues with those fasteners. And it just sits in the bracket, and the bottom there just sits in that bracket. I won't need to remove that bracket, I don't think, and just drop the shock mounts and make sure the shock mounts are present, of course. Otherwise the vibration will just shake this thing to bits, and your new condenser will be destroyed in no time at all. So the discharge line from the compressor comes in here, single bolt. Of course, the fastener is it's a block coupling, O-ring sitting inside here, and same thing, another through bolt on a block coupling, and this is the liquid line which discharges to the through the structure here. That'll make its way back to the expansion valve and the evaporator, of course, right? When you take the bumper off, the only thing you remember is the outside air temperature, ambient air temp. Don't rip it off. Try not to. Perhaps you couldn't appreciate just how much of it is missing. There you go. So there's both lines obviously off. You'll see that I've got both lines capped. As soon as you remove the line, cap them, right? Now, again, the condenser had a hole in it, so there's probably air intrusion in the system anyway, but anytime you disconnect an air conditioning line, obviously it's standard practice to cap them so you don't get moisture ingression. And again, there's just the shock mounts. I'll clean them up a bit, of course. You can see right there where it sits, and the two brackets actually sit up there, hold the top sides. So very simple, very straightforward. The only minor inconvenience, I believe this is a cooler line for what? Must be power steering. I think it's power steering cooler line, because yeah, that would be the transmission. Automatic transmission is integral to the radiator, of course. So yeah, it's just a single loop, but it's a pain in the ass because it's in the way as you try to move the condenser. So there's 1, 2, 3 brackets you need to remove in order to pull it forward, and as you can see, I've just got it temporary lashed to the bumper proper there to keep it out of the way. Okay, so here's the new condenser actually installed there, guys. I did remove the bottom plug there, and I checked, and it does in fact have a sock desiccant back in the receiver dryer there, so we're all good there. I'm going to change the O-rings on the two fittings there, of course. It's a must change the O-rings. The wee bit of disappointment here, the new shock mounts didn't fit the old brackets. They were slightly different. They were a wee bit bigger. I don't know if you can tell, but the old ones fit just fine and they're in good condition, so no worries there. But fail on the shock mounts for sure. There's the 2 new O-rings that came with the kit. Make sure they're lubricated. Lubricate them ideally with refrigerant oil, of course. A couple of points of interest here in the manual here, guys. There is a required amount if you're replacing any component in the AC system. There is a required amount of refrigerant oil. So you can see there that I'm replacing the condenser, so it's going to require 30 cc's of oil to be replenished. And if you were to change the refrigerant, it also requires an additional 20 cc's of oil, so 50 cc's total. Although I believe the alternate refrigerant that I actually use actually has a measure of oil in there, so I may dispense with that. But once the system's all tight, I do have the facility to inject it, as I spoke of before. So that's going to be done when everything's back together and leak checked. What else is on here? Oh yeah, the torque for the bolts on the fittings, right there, 9 foot-pounds, which is a bit of a strange measure for such a small bolt, but yeah, it's 9 foot-pounds. We're talking about these bolts right here on the actual block fitting for the lengths. Okay, so I have the nitrogen bottle valve open, guys. I've got some flow coming through the low side here, and you can see I am venting it through the high side. So what I'm essentially doing is sweeping the entire system, which of course is full of water, full of moisture, because the system actually had a hole in it, and of course it was void of refrigerant. So who knows what kind of air and moisture was in there. So I'm just going to sweep the system with some nitrogen for probably 5 or 10 minutes, probably 5 minutes, and then I'm going to button the system up, and we'll put on the fitting on the high side, but it's connected to the low side gauge here. Don't let this confuse you guys. I'm only doing this so we get the resolution of the low side gauge as far as a leak check is concerned. So once the 5 minutes is up, we'll pressurize the system with nitrogen and actually leak check it. And of course I'm going to focus on the fittings that I just actually replaced, right? Okay, I should mention, and I should give Ian from Automotive Solutions credit, guys. Before you go through all these motions, if you're dealing with an empty system, make sure you don't have a seized compressor. Just spin the compressor there, and you can see, obviously the clutch is disengaged. I can spin the compressor, so it's not a seized compressor. Otherwise, you might be beyond economical repair, right? Then you're in a different situation. So, as I said, credit where credit is due. Brilliant suggestion for Ian. So there, again, don't let this confuse you guys. Yes, I have the high side hooked up to the low side gauge, but again, it's strictly so I can have the better resolution from the low side gauge. Of course, the high side gauge is on a completely different scale. This one is much more accurate for leak purposes, leak check purposes. Okay, so there we go. The system's isolated now, guys. I've got it actually trapped with 48 pounds of pressure. Sorry about the glare there. I think you can see it's just shy of 50 pounds. And I'm going to let this set overnight, and we'll see how we make out. I'll just leak check these fittings here, because these are the obvious ones where it's going to leak. I'm pretty sure the rest of the system is tight. I'm unaware of any other leak. Just a wee tip for soap and water is, obviously adequate. If you want to make it even better, add a wee bit of glycerin, and it actually gives it's like a binding agent, and the bubbles actually stay together, so it makes for a much better leak check. Yeah, let's just give this a wee scoosh. So far so good. Don't see in. Sorry, I'm not sure where the camera was there, guys. I was kind of carried away with spritzing. And it's actually this one on the bottom that I'm worried about. Since I opened this one. That looks okay. So those are the only 3 fittings. I won't bother actually spraying the entire face of the condenser here, although it's possible it's leaking there. If we lose a significant pressure, and I think there is a leak, if I convince myself there is a leak from the reading on the gauges, then I'll do that. But that's it for now. I'm going to leave this, as I said, overnight, guys, with the 48 pounds of pressure trapped in the system. I'll come back. One last thing before I go here, guys. I purchased this book just recently. Just needs a recharge. The Hack Mechanic Guide to Vintage Air Conditioning, written by this fella here, Rob Segal. You might have heard of him. He is the Hack Mechanic. He's got a couple of different books actually on the market. Great book, written for the capable amateur, I would say. A lot of good practical information. American guy, quite funny at times. I actually appreciated his sense of humor. I thought it was quite funny. Yeah, it covers a lot of different material, written in an easy to understand format. No mathematics, no formulas, no charts, or heavy duty theory. Just down to earth practical information how to get your air conditioning system running. And as I said, focuses on vintage material to a degree, but really still very applicable to these cars. Don't be thrown off by that. Yeah, great book. Really enjoyed it.